As we have been reporting for nearly 2 years, 2025 seems to be the year of the NACS. Basically, NACS is a new zodiac sign, but it's also the year of the adapter. Remember when Apple introduced USB-C on their MacBooks in 2015, technically, but 2016 is when they really deleted all the other ports and only went USB-C. Everyone freaked out about adapters. It kind of feels like we're in that new era of a similar adapter situation where everyone's freaking out about adapters, whether you need them or not. And we actually have this world where there's adapters going both directions with NACS and CCS. It's all crazy. So today I'm bringing you guys a complete report on the situation of adopting to NACS and Tesla Supercharger access, everything. Let's jump right in. First, some backstory. So, November 2022 is when Tesla announced it would open NACS to other automakers. Ever since then, we've had a trickle-down effect, basically dominoes starting to fall of everyone and their mother starting to announce their support for Tesla Supercharger connectivity, or really more the NACS plug type. So that was the news cycle for a long time, especially 2023 was a hot year of when most automakers announced that they would adopt the NACS plug and or connectivity to Tesla Superchargers. Now, Tesla requires all the automakers who sign up with them to put NACS on all of their models by the year 2027, actually 2027 model year. So technically, for a lot of cars, that'd be like 2026, because a lot of cars come out the year before the model year. It's confusing. This will be an interesting challenge for some brands because for some platforms, it's hard to support NACS because NACS doesn't have the separate AC and DC lines. So there might require like an extra switching box inside the car, depending on if it's AC charging or DC fast charging. Most cars are adopting NACS though. However, your mileage may vary. Even if they have NACS, your charging speed, given so many variations of platforms and strategies of powertrains that weren't vertically engineered and integrated on the Tesla Supercharger network. So if they have Tesla Supercharger access and you pull up to a V3 Supercharger, you may not get great speeds that you might get otherwise on a CCS plug. None of this should be news to most of you. Of course, charge port location matters. Whether you're plugging into a V3 dispenser or a V4 dispenser, which has a longer cable, that might matter just depending on where everything is. Like I said, your mileage may vary. It'll be so nice when everything is Tesla V4 superchargers, but we, as of this recording, don't have any of those. We have V3 Plus, which are dispensers that are V4, which do have longer cables. Sometimes payment terminals like that helps a lot, but it's going to be a while before we see everything being Tesla Supercharger V4 stations. But as you know, NACS is not exclusively Tesla. We have more and more major charge point operators, CPOs, rolling out the NACS plug on their stations. Sometimes dedicated NACS terminals versus a lot of times, more oftentimes, we see like a CCS plug and a NACS plug on the same dispenser. This is pretty popular with the Alpitronic HYC400s, for example, that we see at the Ionna locations. But there's also, the Omni type handle where it's like a CCS or NACS, depending on how you pull the thing out, which I've seen at multiple charge point operators. And these typically have all the cable length you could possibly need. So let me go through all the automakers in alphabetical order and assess their progress, including the status on Tesla Supercharger access, NACS port adoption, and any other notes. Let's go to school. So as I said, Tesla announced in 2022 the support of bringing supercharger access to all the other EVs, as they put it on their website, setting the standard. This points out that it's been adopted by all large automakers, and manufacturers and charge point operators will be transitioning to the NACS by 2025. Yes, when we were reporting on, automakers, the domino effect of everyone jumping to NACS 2 years ago, even part of last year, 2025 was the year where everyone was like, we are jumping into it full send. Now, some promise, I don't know about promises, but some claims were made of certain timelines, and we've seen some of those walked back. So I'm going to update you guys on all of that. But I just want to point out Tesla's own website showcasing some of this, talking about optimized design, fast charging, reliable performance. Reliable performance is, yes, that is a huge perk of Tesla Superchargers. The amount of times I've rolled up to non-Tesla, I don't always want to name names, but Let's Try America's gotten better lately. But performance reliability has been a challenge for some other companies. But Tesla Supercharging stating fast charging, That's back to that mileage may vary comment. It's really not totally optimized for many cars, and we'll get into those as we go through the brands here in a second. And then optimized design. This is even kind of ironic showing the Cybertruck here because if you remember, at the end of 2023, Tesla started removing pylons from their own supercharger locations, even brand new pylons, because the Cybertruck was too big and not actually optimized for the design of the supercharger layout. So they had to start removing the pylons so the Cybertruck could park close enough to the charger to charge. Hilarious. But now I think they have kind of this optimized design. They're talking about it as far as like no moving parts and lightweight, easy to use cables and just efficient, but not everyone has plug-in charge, of course, with Tesla. And yeah, the cable length is not always actually that optimized. But Tesla does have a list of automakers. I'll be going through all of these, but also ones that aren't even on this list. But Tesla does have a running list on their website of who's actually supported or coming soon. They don't have anything about the ones that are not even looking at it yet. But I think everyone's looking at it. It just may not be fully here yet. So let's jump right into the first letter of the alphabet. A for Acura. You can take all these slides, by the way, and give them to your kids as a book to teach them the alphabet. No, just kidding. Maybe not, though. It might be a good idea. Yes, Acura announced in August 2023 that it would support Tesla Supercharger eventually, and it would jump into NACS. However, it is not yet supported by Tesla as of right now, which is April 2025. So we are coming up to almost 2 years later. The ZDX is, of course, a GM kind of architecture underneath it. So that's kind of funny. I have heard some ZDXs and Prologues allow to use the supercharger by identifying as a Blazer in the app, which is hilarious. I don't know if that's always a functional workaround, but for some people that was a workaround. But starting in June, apparently, they will have adapters and also access to the supercharger network. Then the Acura RSX, that's coming later this year. I'm hoping that'll have NACS, but not entirely sure. We don't know much about the RSX other than the name is offensive to many people who are, 90s sports car enthusiasts. Next up, we have a Fila. They announced September 2024, so one of the last ones to announce, but also the car is not even out yet. But it should be launching with NACS, and I'm assuming different architecture from Honda and Acura, even though there is a Honda-Sony, collaboration, which has made this project. And I think it will launch, yes, with NACS, but hopefully the specs are improved, because the specs, if you all remember, are basically like 2018 EV specs for a car that's stouting very expensive money. So I don't know. Not getting my hopes up for a Fila. Speaking of getting my hopes up, Aptera. I do have to give Aptera credit. They're not yet supported by Tesla, obviously, because they're not yet on the roads. But I want to give them the honorable mention that they were the first to announce it. Tesla announced in 2022 that they'd be opening up their chargers. Aptera in November 2022 at the same time said, "We'll take that." So Aptera was the first vehicle that wasn't Tesla to be shown with an NACS port. Now, obviously, that has been pre-production concept-y stuff so far, but they are working through production intent vehicles. We've, of course, seen some content from Aptera recently, doing kind of road trip testing and getting these production intent engineering vehicles on the road. I love to see that. There's been a lot of speculation as to whether out of spec is like Aptera haters or something, but no, genuinely not. I wish the genuine best to Aptera. I hope they succeed because I personally want to drive one, and I would actually totally own one of these because I'm a huge fan of efficiency, hence why I have a base Model 3. And why I also love having the weirdest car on the road. It's so cool. It looks cool, but I still have to say the jury's still out because the car is not out yet. So moving on. Audi. They announced in December 2023. They are not yet supported by Tesla, but they're aiming to adopt the NACS port in 2025, which is this year. And yeah, the car Kyle just reviewed, the brand new Audi e-tron GT doesn't have NACS. I just reviewed the Audi Q6 e-tron earlier this year, didn't have NACS. So maybe later in the year, in theory, but you would have thought these new cars would roll it out. But hey, when I asked them, they said no comment. So it's probably in the works. They said it'd be in the works. But until then, they have adapters. But not supported by Tesla. By the way, all these cars that are not yet supported by Tesla, they can still work on Tesla Superchargers that are Magic Dock locations. They just don't yet have the back-end connectivity to allow, payment and stuff. Moving on to the Bavarian Motorworks. Yeah, in case you didn't know, BMW is an acronym. It is not yet supported by Tesla either. They said they'd start rolling out NACS ports in early 2025, which again is slipping past us as we speak. That also extends to BMW sub-brands like Mini and Rolls-Royce. We'll get to those later. But the adapter for existing CCS EVs is what they'll use for now. But again, I guess not yet because they don't technically have Tesla Supercharger access yet. But it might happen any day. It might happen before I even get this video up. We'll see. I forgot I put this slide in here. I guess I'll mention everyone. Fisker did announce in 2023 in August that they would be adopting the NACS plug, but they are not yet supported by Tesla, obviously. And they said new vehicles in 2025 would get the port. So yeah, I'm not really sure what this means for existing Fisker owners. If you have a Fisker and you know anything about getting access to Tesla, I'm highly doubting that's going to be a thing now, but maybe I'll be surprised. And of course, it should work in a Magic Dock. I'd love to drive and review one, honestly. So maybe that's something I can work on. If you're in Southern California and you have a Fisker, let me know because I'll be out there for a while and I'd love to spend some time with it. Then we have good old Ford. Detroit was early on this game. In fact, Ford was basically first to the Tesla network. And they really, I think, started the ball rolling, this domino effect of everyone jumping on board. So Ford is officially supported by Tesla. They announced the transition would start happening. They announced it back in May 2023, so just about 2 years ago. And yeah, free adapters to pretty much all their customers. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but initially it was the huge deal where they were giving adapters out. Of course, Kyle and Tom Moloughney were some of the first to actually jump on to testing out a Ford F-150 Lightning in that case on the Supercharger network. Works great, honestly. Ford products work on Tesla Superchargers really well. The adapter is easy to use. But they're planning to have the NACS plug in 2025. Lincoln should too. Of course, Lincoln doesn't have any EVs right now, but in 2025, any more Fords and Lincolns that are announced that are electric should, in theory, have the NACS port. Moving on to Genesis. Genesis announced in October 2023. It is supported by Tesla currently as well. And they said they'd be NACS by late 2024 in the US, Canada in 2025. So maybe we're in Canadian time because it's still not a thing. However, I think they had the GV70 electric unveiled in 2024, the new version shown here in this photo. And that's still aiming for the first half of 2025, and it does have the NACS port. So when they said NACS by late 2024, maybe they just meant unveiling the vehicle that would have it. But as far as I know, this car is coming out around the corner and might already be rolling out, and I'm really excited to try this out. I'm excited to try the NACS on this car. Then we have GM. I'm not going to break this up into all the subgroups because GM seems to be a pretty cohesive situation between, GMC, Chevrolet, and Cadillac. So many brands in my head right now. But GM is also supported by Tesla. They first announced the transition would be coming back in June 2023. That's when they announced they were adopting Tesla. They were an early adopter just after Ford on that announcement. So they said they'd have Tesla access in 2024, NACS ports in 2025. We don't see the NACS ports. In fact, I was just reviewing the brand new Optic and Escalade IQ, and still no NACS ports. But it'd be funny if Cadillac's going Dolby Atmos on all their cars by next year. It'd be funny if they had Dolby Atmos and everything before NACS. I didn't really expect to see that, but here we are. And they have adapters for $225 through their app. Speaking of GM, we have the Honda Prologue here. Well, that's what I have a picture of, but I'm not actually technically referring to the Prologue entirely. So back in August 2023, Honda said they would also adapt it. They are not yet supported by Tesla, but this should be coming alongside Acura in June, because the Prologue is basically the same story as the ZDX, with adapters coming to give Supercharger access. Really curious how they'll charge. I can't wait to try that out. But will Honda even have a new electric vehicle in 2025? because they said in 2025 their vehicles would start having NACS. However, as far as we can tell, the 0 Series vehicles, the Saloon and the SUV, will be coming out next year, 2026, and they should have NACS. They wouldn't really confirm that when I was reviewing those cars with Jess a few months ago, but super intriguing. I really hope they come out. I hope they're awesome. I hope they look as cool as the concepts looked. That rarely happens, but on the other hand, I really like the design of this Prologue. So I'm feeling hopeful. Even though the Prologue touts the old logo, this is the new logo up here, and that is the new logo that'll be used on their electrified vehicles. So the Prologue should be the only one with the old logo, as far as I can tell. But even if the 0 Series come out in 2026, I'm hoping the Acura RSX is kind of the first look at this overarching brand strategy for NACS that we should see later this year. Then we have Hyundai, pronounced Hyundai like Sunday, as they would say. Back in October 2023, they announced they'd be also embracing Tesla Superchargers and NACS. They are currently supported by Tesla. Very recently, though. Ironically, the 2025 Ioniq 5 started delivering to customers before it technically had Supercharger access, even though it had an NACS port. Yes, that's right. They have NACS. They are one of the few vehicles with NACS, and that's really awesome and exciting. I've been able to test it out. In fact, our friend Corbin over on the Ionic Guy YouTube channel, definitely check that out if you're a Hyundai fan. Me and him did a Supercharger test. Now, these are one of the cars that do interface with Superchargers now, well, pretty flawlessly because, NACS and everything, but they don't actually charge super well. Not horribly, because the charging curve is just so plateauy, but they peaked at like 123 kilowatts, which is not a very high peak. My Tesla Model 3 peaks at over double that at 250. But we did a 10 to 80% test earlier on this channel, and he beat me, which is crazy, because that just shows how poor the... No, not the symbol. There we go. That's the right symbol. That just shows how poor the Tesla charging curve is. But Hyundai does have an ACS, and they have adapters going for both directions. So the previous cars with CCS have adapters to go to NACS. The new cars with NACS have adapters to go back to CCS. And I think they're free to customers, like the CCS going to NACS. They're free for customers that ordered before, or maybe took delivery before January 31st, 2025. Oh God. just kidding. Okay. So Jaguar, God, I don't know how Jaguar is how I like to say it. They are not yet supported by Tesla. Makes sense. But September 2023 is when they announced they would be coming to that. That is before this whole branding debacle that came out. It's grown on me. I mean, I like quirky things, cool colors. The logo is definitely different than what it should have originally was, but hey, they're trying to redefine the brand, which maybe they needed to, because not many people were talking about Jaguar. So upcoming EVs will be compatible with NACS in 2025, but I'm not sure that confirms the port. But surely they'd have to. So I'm assuming future cars will have an ACS, and then I-Pace owners will be able to use adapters that Jaguar will source from Tesla once that comes out. Same story with Land Rover. I don't have a separate slide for them. It's just really the same company. So Land Rover will also be unveiling new vehicles that presumably will have an ACS. Then we have Kia, or KN, as people said early on when the logo just came out. A lot of car companies have taken this EV onslaught timing to correlate with setting up new logos to redefine the brand in this new EV landscape. So Kia announced in October 2023 they would also be joining, so about the same time as Hyundai, but they are not actually yet supported by Tesla, so a bit of a disparity there against Hyundai, who beat them to the punch. Hyundai also beat them to an ACS port, so Hyundai's winning, I guess. Q4 of 2024 is when they said they would have native NACS, but I think they missed that, and adapters in 2025. Which would be free for any EV6 and EV9 customers who bought after September 4th, 2024. So, any existing Kia with CCS will be able to charge with an adapter after software updates, which I believe is coming soon, but hasn't come out yet, and that's really where the delays are coming from. I say any CCS Kia, actually not the Kia Soul EV, which had CCS added later on. So that is one thing that's missing, I guess. So just delays, delays on delays on delays. Like when you search this on Google, you'll see Reddit posts on like, it's supposed to be January and then like March, and now it's looking like April. And will it happen in April? I don't know. Let me know what you think. But Kia is, a lot of Kia fans are waiting impatiently, maybe is the right word. Yeah. Then we have Lexus, which also announced in October 2023. Again, 2023 is when most people announced they'd be adopting this. They are not yet supported by Tesla, but it should be coming. And yeah, in 2025, Lexus models will come with the NACS port. Otherwise, people can use adapters on their existing RZ vehicles. So curious to see how new Lexus vehicles will be. The RZ, the BZ4X, the sister car that we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah, not the best EVs, not terrible. I mean, it's a Lexus. It's a nice place to be, but not great range, not great efficiency. Just yeah, kind of subpar in a lot of our testing, but a nice car because it is a Lexus. So it kind of depends what you're looking for there. It's fine. It's not a review, but that's just where Lexus is at. Then we get the Lucid. Lucid was first. Kind of, technically. They announced in 2023 November, so at the end of the year, kind of after most everyone else, that they would be supporting an ACS, and then they beat everyone to the punch. It is supported by Tesla, and the Gravity did come out with the NACS port before the Hyundai Ioniq 5, just barely. But the Gravity was really only delivered to a few customers, mostly friends and family, employees situations. Deliveries should once again ramp up here at the end of April, is my guess. But yeah, so barely, and technically they've won, but honestly Hyundai is really who's getting the NACS port cars out the door. Adapters do exist. The Lucid Air owners can use those, but the adapters, I mean, Lucid Air in general struggles on superchargers, does not charge well. I mean, it wasn't really ever intended to work with them, so it wasn't, they're super high voltage, 924 volts. The Lucid Gravity is 926 volts, but has a really interesting situation with the rear inverter and how I gotta turn these effects off. The Gravity has the rear inverter, which can boost up the voltage of the supercharger and basically bring in 220 kilowatts almost flat, which is really pretty impressive for a non-native situation. So really impressed by that. Really cool work by that team. We have a recent video on this channel kind of deep diving into how that all came to be. Very interesting if you like to get technical. But yeah, Lucid, they're on it. They're working with Tesla. They don't sell many cars. They are compelling alternatives, but they don't really have, cheaper cars yet. Oh, God. Well, this car was, what did Kyle review? What did Kyle say on that video? I think it was like the worst EV of the year, whatever year that was, 2022, I think. So technically, LOL. Mazda announced in January 2024 that it would adopt Tesla Supercharger and an ACS, and everyone kind of laughed because they're like, haha, okay. But really, it just means any EVs that come out in 2025 or later will have an ACS and Supercharger access. So no surprise there. That's pretty cool. I'm cautiously optimistic for future Hondas. Like CX-50, awesome car. CX-30 was pretty great. CX-90, CX-70, I love all their crossovers. I own a Miata. Like, I'm a huge Mazda fan, but like as an EV guy, it's like that's hard to, yikes. Mercedes-Benz, they are supported by Tesla currently. 2025 adoption of NACS ports. We did see the CLA just unveiled with NACS, I believe, so they're moving that direction, but also rolling out their own charging network, which hopefully is a mix of CCS and NACS. Over on the Autospec Bits channel, Walter did just see some of their new charging stations in, I think, the Carolinas, the I-85 corridor. So that's pretty awesome to see them really jumping into EVs, but also charging. And yeah, even though the charging network rollout was delayed a bit, we'll see if their NACS situation also gets delayed. Like, when will the current vehicles have updates to NACS, like the EQE, the EQS, the G-Wagon? Hell yeah, brother. I love that thing. Adapters are available for $185 from dealerships if you do have a current CCS Mercedes, which are pretty much all of them at the moment. But again, like I said, CLA is coming, and that thing looks pretty cool. Mini, it's really just under the BMW umbrella, but I just felt like putting a photo up here because I love minis. So yeah, not yet supported by Tesla. Same story as BMW. They said they'd start rolling out NACS port in 2025. which again is slipping past us. So we'll see. Adapters otherwise. Nissan, yeah, I'm not super excited on their EV situation. Maybe it's a whole separate video, deep dive topic for another day. But the Aria does have support by Tesla, so I was surprised to see them beat some of the other companies. But you can take your Aria with an adapter to a supercharger, plug it in, get juice. Doesn't charge that great anyways, so I'm not sure how it compares with the supercharger. But hey, at least you have the option. I believe the Leaf, the new generation Leaf, will have the NACS port already. I think that's what they showed on that when they kind of unveiled the super concept-y version of it. But I'm super intrigued by upcoming Nissan products. They need to turn it around because the brand's not looking amazing right now. By the way, Nissan announced it all the way back in July 2023, so they were on the game as far as getting supercharger access. Polestar, June 2023 is when they announced it. They were also the first foreign automaker to jump in alongside Volvo. So the NACS port would be standard on all EVs in 2025. Adapters for $230 through service centers and dealerships. We don't currently see NACS ports on the new ones that are being delivered right now, so I guess maybe later in the year. 2025 is not over yet, so I'm assuming we have a lot more news to report on, and I'll probably do another one of these videos, honestly, later in the year to see how people are tracking on their promises of 2025. Porsche. I'm a big fan of Porsche. They were late, though, to the announcement, along with the rest of Volkswagen Group. December 2023 is when they finally said they'd embrace NACS and Tesla Superchargers. They're not yet supported by Tesla Superchargers. They would have NACS in 2025 plus adapters. Still waiting to see either of those. Like I said, Kyle reviewed the Audi e-tron GT recently, which is sharing with the new Taycan. None of those have NACS yet, but it should be coming. This video has taken so long that I completely lost daylight. No, just kidding. I had to run an errand really quick, but back at it. So Porsche, yes, love the Taycan. I actually do love the Macan EV, even though it's been plagued with many issues with rolling out and software and stuff. So hopefully they get supercharger support soon. Officially, they are on the coming soon list on Tesla's own website. So yeah, we'll see. But if you have a Porsche and you want Tesla supercharging access, let me know how that works. I guess they are high voltage cars as well, so probably not the best charging performance, but I actually haven't tried a Magic Dock. So if you've tried a Magic Dock with your Taycan, let me know how it went. Rivian. Love Rivian. Actually, all these are press photos, which we usually get from the Automaker to make content with. This is a photo I took on one of my favorite days of my job ever, where we were actually testing it out in the desert. Actually, the photo ends like right here, and then I just had the really terrible AI extension thing, which is hilarious. But no, incredible vehicles. Also early to adopt. So in June 2023, Rivian was like, hey, we're joining NACS. We commit to working with Tesla and stuff. And then they got support by Tesla, also early, about the same time as Ford, but not quite. Like years makes no difference. About a week later or so, I think. Just enough time to where our cross-country truck race, the Rivian couldn't use superchargers, but the Ford could. So there was almost overlap, but not quite. But NACS ports, those should be coming sometime this year. That's the hope anyways. R2 was unveiled the beginning of last year, so early 2024, and that had an NACS port on the prototype at the time. Although I think that's since been maybe moved to be probably better for supercharger access with V3s. Not positive, but we'll find out. RJ has been starting to share more and more things about the R2, which is exciting. But yes, NACS should come to the R1 models as well this year. Not sure how soon, but I'm sure that is coming. Of course, R2 and R3 and R3X should all have NACS ports. Maybe the van, not positive. With the van thing, I believe the supercharger access is only for like actual retail cars. So for example, GM has access, but Bright Drop vans do not. So not sure about the Rivian van thing. But hopefully the R1 gets the NACS port sooner than later, because that would be another nice news cycle thing. And I feel like Rivian's needing news cycles because we have this awkward length of time between R2 coming out in a year from now, but R1 was already refreshed lately. So we're just kind of in this like limbo phase. So hoping for more colors, NACS port, like who knows what else. Hopefully a better sound system, maybe through software, hardware. I don't really know how they would do that, but excited for Rivian to see what they do. They are offering adapters for free initially. I'm not sure if it's still free, but yeah, adapters were a thing they had early on as well. Rolls-Royce. Finally, I can cover a car for the masses. I mean, maybe in 6 years and 6 owners, this car will be 30 grand. That'd be sick ride for 30 grand. Rolls-Royce is also, of course, in the BMW group, so all the data from BMW and Mini also applies to Rolls-Royce. Announced October 2023, not yet supported by Tesla. They said they'd start rolling out NACS, et cetera, et cetera. And there's adapters available for your Rolls-Royce Spectre, if that's something you really do. I've never seen one charging, but I think Kyle has. I'm sure it happens. I haven't seen that very often. If you're spending 600 grand on an EV, I feel like you probably maybe have the money to also put a DC fast charger in your house. That'd be sick. Scout. I figured I'd throw this in here as well. It is under sort of Volkswagen Group umbrella, and their vehicles are not coming out until 2027, I believe. So they will, have to ship with NACS. That's what they've said to do. Not yet supported by Tesla at the moment, but it was announced in December 2023, along with, I think, the rest of Volkswagen Group, that they will be rolling out to NACS and Superchargers. So we'll see on that. Jury's still out. The Stellantians, whatever you call these brands. I'm not covering all these brands individually because, well, there's a lot of brands under the Stellantis umbrella. And also, none of them seem super class leading or market leading, at least in our market. Over in Europe, it's actually a different story. Some of their brands are actually doing a lot with EVs. But here in the US, we don't have a whole lot going on. They are not yet supported by Tesla. They finally announced they would do NACS in February 2024, but so I think they were like the last major automaker to announce it, or automakers umbrella. But I think they specifically said SAE J3400, not actually mentioning NACS or Tesla. So not really sure what that's about, because everyone else kind of mentioned Tesla because they're in talks with Tesla. So Stellantis is just not on board yet. I'm curious if they ever will be completely. It's going to be interesting. They are, but it seems like their hand was forced with NACS because NACS has been rolling out to so many other charge point operators. So we'll see if the Charger EV sells, which, by the way, they're kind of not selling very well. In fact, I've heard dealers are not even stocking them anymore. You can special order one if you want, but such a bummer though, because this looks so good. And the Mazda MX-30 looks so good. Like, a lot of EVs that don't sell look good, which is kind of interesting. Then we have Subaru, the Solterra. Not a great car. It's a fine car. I mean, it's just a car, I guess. Nothing really class leading about it. It is, of course, shared with the sister car, the BZ4X. So it was announced, I think, November 2023, so barely after Toyota. And an NACS should appear this year in 2025 at some point. Otherwise, adapters, not yet supported by Tesla. Same story with Toyota. We have the BZ4X here. Same sister car, underlying architecture as the Subaru Solterra, and a lot of shared stuff with, Lexus RZ. I think October 2023 is when Toyota said they would, work on that, but no NACS yet. So NACS this year at some point. Not officially supported by Tesla yet, but they're not really the best at DC fast charging anyways. But maybe they'd be fine on superchargers. Like, their performance is already so subpar with DC fast charging that maybe the supercharger would be just as good as anything else and maybe easier to use. VinFast. Nope, nothing yet. Not even on Tesla's website. VinFast's website, we have nothing on this. VinFast owners are left wondering what's going to happen, if they're going to get NACS or supercharger access. Neither has been confirmed. As far as I know, I did some digging on this, but it was really just VinFast owners and forums and stuff being like, yo, is this ever going to happen? So maybe adapters would work. I don't know if you have a VinFast, if you've tried adapters with NACS plugs such as, Ionna. I mean, it should, because it is just using the CCS standard for communication and things. Same type of thing. So, not really sure on the VinFast situation, but hopefully We'll have to ask Francie if she has any updates on her VinFast VF8, and I'm hoping to try VinFast VF9 pretty soon, actually. I'm definitely curious. I've been outgoing about how much I dislike the car in a lot of ways, but that's just because it felt not fully baked, and so maybe the VF9 will be better. We'll see. Volvo. June 2023 is when they announced that they would jump in. So kind of the same story as Polestar. They were the first foreign automaker to jump in along with Polestar. So NACS port would be standard on all EVs in 2025. I don't know when that starts because I think we've seen the EX90 and the EX30s roll out with CCS ports. So maybe mid-cycle or mid-year update or something. I'm not really sure. Maybe the end of the year update, because it was the end of last year when me and Kyle went on the press drive to try out the EX90, and of course he was testing the EX30 over in Europe. Hoping to do more testing with these cars soon, by the way, on this channel. So stay tuned, because I think Volvo's pretty exciting, but nothing big on that front yet. Adapters, also like Polestar, available for $230, I believe, through these service centers or dealerships. Finally, we have VW, Volkswagen. They announced in December 2023, so along with the whole Volkswagen group, of course, though they're not yet supported by Tesla now, but they were late to announce compared to many other automakers, like not compared to Stellantis, but for everyone else. But they were in line with the announcement from the SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, when they formally announced the NACS as part of their standards. So maybe they're just being, very German and precise about it. And they were like, oh, okay, we will, once it's all formulaically baked into the standards of the SAE, then we'll jump on board, which I guess they did. So we should see NACS ports rolling out on these cars at some point. And then 2025, yeah, NACS with adapters is what'll be the case for now. So I'd love to see some Volkswagen ID buzzes sitting at superchargers. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So that's really the list of the automakers that I could really think of. Let me know if I missed anything. Once again, I kind of lumped some all in together, like Ford and Lincoln, the GM brands, of course, Jaguar, Land Rover. It's so hard to keep track. There's so many companies. Like when I was starting to compile this list, I was like, wow, there are so many EVs out now, which is cool. I mean, 5 years ago, the landscape was much different. 10 years ago, it was Tesla and like, oh my gosh, the Chevy Bolt is almost out. So, well, in the Leaf, I guess. Yeah, the good old Leaf. But yes, like I said, many CPOs are also joining this NACS umbrella situation. So regardless of connectivity and partnership with Tesla, pretty much everyone is really going to this NACS port. It is more elegant. It is easier. Generally, the cables are a bit lighter, although most NACS cables that are like on these Alpitronics or charge point stations or wherever are not quite as nimble as the Tesla cables on the V3 cabinets. Even a V4 cabinet, for example, has a stiffer cable, so it is not quite the same experience, but it's still better. It still is more elegant, and I think it is really the right move. CCS just feels so old-fashioned compared to NACS when you really do try them side by side. So excited to see, Ionna, ChargePoint, Electrify America starting to like roll out some NACS stuff. In fact, we had recent news over on Out of Spec Bits of them using some Alpitronic HYC 400s, which is pretty sweet. Not sure that Electrify America is jumping into Alpitronic. They're just maybe beta testing various hardware, because they've had a rough go. Electrify America has had some major reliability issues, so hoping to see them really turn it around and prove that they can handle uptime. Maybe they're starting to wake up because they're seeing Tesla open up to everyone else, and Tesla's known for really good uptime. They're not flawless, by the way, but they're known for much better uptime. And Ionna is really, really intriguing. Of course, it's a conglomerate joint venture with a bunch of automakers who helped make that happen. They're rolling out with their every chargeries, which are so cool. I'm such a fan of Ionna's branding, marketing, the vibe, just everything. I wish we had Ionna in Colorado. Hopefully they come out. They're not too far away. They're a few hours east of me in Kansas, and hopefully we see some on the West Coast and stuff. EVgo, of course, Blink, even Rivian Adventure Network. That'll be interesting to keep track of what Rivian does, because Rivian should be rolling out NACS this year to their vehicles, but then there's also the Rivian Adventure Network, which is currently CCS, but maybe they'll swap cables. Maybe they'll build new locations that are NACS, whereas other ones are CCS. Not really sure. Jury's still out. Curious what you guys' thoughts are. Curious what you think of this content. Yeah, is any of this surprising? Do you have any specific questions? It was a lot of information to gather. It took a lot of research, and there's still, it's hard because there's so many leeway moments of brands, like Kia, for example, that it's like, all the news is like, oh, they're getting Tesla Supercharger access in January, and then different other news saying March, and then still April, still no access. Although some people have found loopholes with certain cars, like a Kia identifying as a Hyundai in the app sometimes let you charge on superchargers, but then I think they've cracked down on that. I don't know. Same type of thing worked with Honda and Acura and GM stuff, for example. So it's wild. It feels like the Wild West. It's kind of chaotic, but also kind of exciting. So thanks for watching. See you guys in another Out of Spec Reviews video very soon. Check us out on all the other channels. Of course, we are covering so many things, especially over on Out of Spec Bits, where you'll see me quite a bit. And shop.outofspecstudios.com if you want to get yourself a fun hat that I wear probably too much. Bye.